want to introduce and welcome Chris Querrey to our interview here.
Hello.
If for those of you who don't know, obviously, Chris is the mother of Sam Querrey, U.S. tennis pro, and longtime friend of myself. So we're super excited to have Chris on here. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. I really appreciate this.
My
Um,
pleasure. Glad to be here.
the kind of what we're going to talk about tonight is the junior tennis from the junior tennis side of Sam, growing up, and kind of what you guys went through navigating the junior tennis scene with Sam, and then through like the 10s and 12s period, and the 14 and unders, the 16 and unders, and then kind of eventually making that decision to turn pro, and maybe even talk a little bit about his rookie year on tour. I think a lot of
Okay.
times people see tour professionals and kind of see sometimes the end result of that. A lot of the stuff that they don't, the backstory about how they got to where they are, some of the ups and downs. It always looks glamorous when you're playing at center court Wimbledon, but to be able to kind of see the path, especially for the young kids that are coming up and even their parents, I think is super valuable, and stuff that you don't always get when you're hearing kind of quick sound bites on ESPN or what have you. And so I'm super excited to kind of get a chit chat with you a little bit and kind of get your insight and feedback on how that went, for you guys as a family, as well as Sam, individually. But starting in, like, I'd probably kind of like to start when you guys made that move from Las Vegas out to Thousand Oaks. So that would probably kind of be Sam's like 10 and under, 12 and under time frame, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yes.
So
Yes.
the tennis playing at that point, and kind of the mindset for you guys as parents with a 10, 11-year-old tennis player, was kind of what was the thinking? What do we want out of tennis?
Right. Well, what it was basically then was we were in Las Vegas. Sam was playing Little League baseball, um, doing other sports. I
Yeah.
think he was in fourth grade, but we were doing a couple of private tennis lessons each week, and maybe a tennis clinic.
Hmm.
And again, just he had just started playing tennis, was really having fun with it. Um, in Las Vegas, you could take a tennis lesson at Bally's on the roof of the hotel.
Right.
And that was sort of where the juniors played tennis. Also, he went to there was a local swim and tennis club in Henderson where we lived, which is just the suburb outside of Vegas, if people don't know it. Lots of kids there doing gymnastics on one of the tennis courts. It was a covered bubble. So if you were there in the
Oh,
summer,
okay.
obviously it was very hot. So
Yeah.
kids were doing gymnastics on one court, and then the other three courts were junior tennis, camps in the summer and things like that. So just keeping it fun, trying to occupy the kids in the summer, not be too hot after tennis. They'd go swimming. So we were doing I mean, he was taking tennis lessons, and there were a few small tournaments that were 12 and under, but there weren't a lot of kids entered in those tournaments.
Yeah.
So, of course, you'd see the same faces.
Hmm.
I feel like the draws were small, um, and they were at local clubs. But tennis was thriving in Las Vegas, and I'm sure it still is. It was, it was fun. The kids in our neighborhood weren't necessarily playing tennis, but Sam quickly got to know these kids in the tournaments and was gung ho about, going to clinic in summer, taking lessons because, he enjoyed those kids. And then again, there was swimming and fun things after. So that's where we got our start.
Yeah.
And then actually, Sam's dad, my husband Mike, had an opportunity to take a job in Thousand Oaks, or in Southern California, I should say. So we moved in middle of the school year in 1998. So Sam would have been a fifth grader, I believe, at that time, fourth or fifth. So we jumped at the opportunity because we're from Southern California. We wanted to get back. And it was just worked perfect for tennis because we knew there was this thriving tennis community in Southern California with a lot of tournaments and way more kids, and just, he could really keep going with it if he wanted to. What, not serious, but, and again, he came to Southern California and played on a, I think he played AYSO soccer,
Hmm.
and he played flag football. He went to cotillion. I mean, he did a lot of other activities. We were
Yeah.
still doing everything, but certainly tennis was going to open up
Yeah.
moving to SoCal.
Did he
So
kind of
then
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was gonna
I
say.
was just going to say, at the time we moved there, it was April. And I feel like sectionals were 2 months later for the boys 12 and under.
Yep.
I think they called it
Exactly. Beginning of
sectionals.
June. Yep.
And somehow through Sam's ranking in Las Vegas, he was able to enter into sectionals, or they made a special, you know, exception, or I don't know, I can't remember how that worked.
Yeah.
But so we jumped right into sectionals in SoCal and saw how big and, inviting the whole thing was.
Yeah. Which is massive. Like SoCal sectionals is, I think it
Yes.
probably still is in terms of participation, the biggest event in the country. I mean, it's just the draws are
Wow.
massive, and so you're all of a sudden you're looking at, instead of draws of maybe 8 or 12 in Vegas, a full 256 draws for a 10 and under event.
Yes.
And so it's
And
it's
they took 2 weekends or
yeah.
a whole week or whatever. So
So at that point, was Sam kind of driving the bus, so to speak, in terms of the amount of tennis that he was playing? You kind of let him decide, how much tennis he wanted to
definitely.
play.
Yes, because when we moved, again, that timing was just so great because I feel like summer came. It might have been the, like, second week of June. So now it's summer,
Hmm.
and all this tennis is going on, and we're driving from Thousand Oaks down to, I feel like, Orange County for
Yep.
some of these matches.
Yep.
But it's so fun because there's a handful of kids from the Thousand Oaks area who are involved, and so you're getting to spend a lot of time with these kids in Thousand Oaks after school practicing, at the various clubs, and then going down to Orange County, and it's a whole weekend. So you're in the car with a buddy or two
Hmm.
and going to these, you know, tennis sites. And then after, we're going to the beach even, we're staying down there and getting pizza, or, trying to make it fun. But yes, Sam was definitely driving the bus saying, when's the next tournament?
Hmm.
Or, what else can I get involved in? Because I think he just felt like these are my people, they're, even the girls, they're all sitting around after the tennis matches watching other players, and somebody's mom's maybe, gone and got ice cream or whatever. It just seemed like kind of a big family,
Yeah.
certainly at that age level,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
So the underlying theme for you guys was just keep it fun. Expectation level was
yes.
pretty. I don't even know how he did in that first year at sectionals. So in terms of expectation level, it's just kind of, let's kind of get into the environment first and see what it's
Yes.
like, and expose Sam to maybe a different level than he's accustomed to.
Oh,
Definitely,
most
definitely a
definitely.
deeper
I
talent
remember.
pool. You know.
Oh, I remember the first match that he played, and I'm sitting on the sidelines with my daughter, who's 3 years younger, and the kids have got the score wrong. Okay, they've got the score wrong, and but you realize, I think in Las Vegas it was so small that, even though of course you're not supposed to help anyone with the score, probably we did back there because it was just such a small, the same few families as I recall in Vegas. So anyway, we get to SoCal and these kids got the score wrong. And so, Sam's never seen where they are going off the court and getting the referee and bringing the referee back. And then you have to agree, we can go back and say, we remember at 5-all or whatever. So all of those kinds of things, but it's kind of big time because they've got all the referees and, there's 12 courts deep and there's just a lot going on, and all of that is new, but most definitely, I think he right away he loved the whole, certainly at that time, of course you want to win. They all want to win.
Yeah.
But, you understood that if you won, you got to come back maybe the next day, or just the big draws on the wall and you could see how your friends had done. And I think it's just all, my recollection was it was all really fun. And there were back draws too sometimes.
Right.
So it wasn't that big a deal. If you lost, you got to play in the back draw. It wasn't like you were out.
Yeah.
So it seemed really inviting and inclusive and fun at that time. That's how I remember it anyway.
Yeah. And so moving from that into maybe his first or second year, or maybe his second year into 12s, and kind of fast forwarding a little bit. And now he's been in SoCal for a while. And now you guys have kind of been in the environment for a while. And now he is starting to win a little bit. And he's starting to kind of climb the rankings a little bit, and it's probably opening some doors for some other types of events.
Zonals was quite fun.
Yeah, that's a good one. And at that time, like I know but not everybody knows, is I was probably Sam's primary coach, would you say, during that time frame?
Yes. Most definitely. Other than probably clinics, he was with you. Yeah.
And so I know a little bit about that time, obviously that time period, because I was on the court with him like day in and day out for the most part. But in terms of, starting to play zonals and starting to play boys 12s national hard courts during that period of time, how did the weekly schedule start to change for him?
So that would have been, I feel like that's still 6th grade, if I'm remembering it correctly. So a lot of kids are still in elementary school, or they used to be.
Yeah.
So you're still, you're at school till 2:45 or 3. And I actually, now that you say that, Tim, I remember sometimes, occasionally you would help me out. If Ellen was, playing a sport or something, you would even help me and maybe pick him up from school once in a blue moon. I almost feel like, or a couple of kids.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like the schedule bumped up a little bit. I mean, I always feel like he had 1 or 2 private lessons a week. We tried to make that happen after school or within your schedule. And then obviously as much of the clinic time, and also just playing with other kids. There was a lot of, after school, getting the couple of kids together, Wes Burrows, one, Ben Sunling, kids that I remember from that time. And we all sort of we as parents said, hey, you boys need to play every Tuesday after school, and you need to play a set, or you need to play, practice. Now, I don't know exactly what they were all doing, because it's not like I was over there sitting on the tennis court watching it, because let's face it, most parents don't have the time for that.
Well, that's good. That piece right there, Chris, is really interesting, because I would say, I coached Sam for close to 5, maybe 6 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can probably recall on one hand the amount of times that you or Mike actually were around watching a lesson. And I say that as a compliment.
Thank you.
Because it's a lot of times, I think what happens is the parents are, it's a real tough thing, because I think you have to have the tennis parent who kind of there's got to be a tennis parent that kind of drives the bus a little bit. At the end of the day, these kids are 11 and 12 years old, and you got to have somebody that is, scheduling it and getting them to practices and things like that. But I also think there is a lot of value in letting the kids kind of own their own tennis and taking the lessons on their own and doing that type of stuff. And so I think to your guys' credit is you really let Sam own his tennis, and he took his lessons, and you guys were supportive 100%, but you guys weren't on the court. I mean, Mike had a career, you had stuff going on. It's there wasn't time to sit there for even an hour, and probably you didn't want that anyways. You didn't want to be,
No, I definitely didn't want to do it. Like you said, I had a younger child who certainly didn't want to sit on the court and watch her brother. And frankly, I know it's not probably healthy, I mean, I'm sure that he and Wes were out there playing baseball on some days instead of tennis, or they were goofing off. But I think they both had a tournament maybe on Saturday.
Yeah.
So I think they also both realized they could help each other.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to find those kids that your kid's simpatico with, and they are gonna, take some serves and play a set or two. And so, yeah, it just was the healthy way to go.
Yeah.
And I think, it's a double. First of all, you have a kid who is liking it, so that makes it a little easier, right? As opposed to your kid who have signed them up for piano lessons and they hate piano. Well, right. That's going to be a tough deal, right? Yeah. But this was already working, so to speak, like he enjoyed it. But yes, the kids need to take responsibility for, that practice time during the week where you're not necessarily, it's not always a clinic or not always a private lesson or an arranged match. It's nice if they have a buddy or a pal or someone that they can. There's a few fallbacks like that, someone. If you don't have something perfect, you can just go and hit and it's constructive and it's helpful and you're getting something out of it. So yeah, that was really nice to have. And Thousand Oaks, where you were and we were, gosh, it's just crazy how that's been such a nice tennis community.
Zonals to me is still, I mean, I've been to literally every national event you can go to, and I've had the privilege to do so. But zonals to me is that 12 and under zonals experience in Tucson, Arizona. And a lot of times that's the first kind of national exposure for a lot of the kids. A lot of times it's the first time they travel. And that environment and that event is such a launching pad for so many of the kids that play zonals. If you were to track those kids, those to me are the kids that launching pad of that first positive national team. Its environment it's such a healthy, fun, because the grinding of the national schedule changes a little bit once you get out of that team, and they have 12 zonals, 14 zonals, 16 zonals, and they have some other team competitions. Right. But,
Well, I think the kids too, they meet those, like Sam met, I remember a handful of these kids from Pacific Northwest.
Other sections, right?
Other sections. And so they started, I mean, I'm dating this whole thing back, but they started emailing.
Yep. And,
they were, I guess they did have cell phones, texting. So all of a sudden now these guys are like your pals. And it's like, hey, are you going to this tournament or that tournament? So that's the other benefit of zonals is meeting kids from the other sections.
World starts to get really, really large.
It gets big. It gets big. And that was really special because I remember one time Sam was invited, Sam and Ben Sunling, both kids. We put Ben's mom, Jennifer, who's got 4 other kids.
Right.
And so we put those boys, I think, on a Southwest flight, which probably was their first flight, I bet, or, they hadn't had many flights alone before. And they flew to Oregon, and another mom, Karen.
Schnug, right?
Not Karen Schnug. I'll think of her name in a minute. Patrick, her son is Patrick, that he was small. gosh, I can't believe it. I still talk to her. Anyway, she picked them up, hosted them for the whole weekend with some other moms.
Yeah.
Karen Schnug, one of them, in this indoor facility, which of course our boys in SoCal had never seen that.
Right, right.
Because it's raining and they're up there with all these kids and they're having the greatest time. And anyway, so yes, it just makes your world bigger, like you said.
So we get into like 14s now.
Okay.
And it starts to ramp up a little bit. I think do you remember anything specific about kind of the 14 and under time frame? I know he had his first kind of big win nationally.
Big win. So yeah, I was going to say in the boys 12s, I think that was in Alameda, and he lost along the way there.
Well, I think at that event, I think he came in third.
He came in third, right?
I remember correctly. He came in third, and so at that time, he was starting to kind of put himself on the map a little bit,
Yes.
And so by the time first year 14s rolled around, I think which was boys 14s national hardcourts was in San Antonio. Right?
San Antonio, which of course, Tim, it's got to be baked in your memory because it's a week before you're getting married.
Yeah.
And so you miss your bachelor party, you miss all the fun because you're at the boys 14s.
Yeah.
In San Antonio, Texas. So you take Sam and again, big draw, kids from all over. And Sam had qualified, and all the kids that qualify. And I remember, I don't even really remember, so to speak. Of course, we could follow along on the computer at home and see the results. But I feel like in terms of our coach relationship with you, we felt like this was Sam's week at nationals, and you had it taken care of. You were going to make sure that he got plenty of rest and didn't, drank enough water and going to have a good time. But, I feel like it plodded along there. I don't remember too much about it other than he did make it to the final, and then he obviously won.
Yeah. Played
Donald Young in the final, but that would have been junior high. So Sam was certainly still going to junior high, regulars. I mean, he went to public school the whole way through.
Yeah, probably would have been his like 8th grade. I think maybe his 8th grade.
8th grade. So where I remember things got a little more serious there is we asked at school if he could leave school an hour early so that his PE was with you instead of doing PE at school.
Right.
He did, 4 or 5 hours, and after lunch he might have had one class, and then I picked him up. So he was training, probably every day after school at that point, for sure.
Yeah.
Either with you and again with clinic with other kids that you trained. So that's where we stepped it up. It was an everyday thing.
Yeah. I think during that time, I kind of distinctly remember that first year 14s, we went and it was maybe like a 3rd or 4th round type of a deal that first year.
Yes.
And he went and he had a nice little run in doubles. And I think we left that tournament going, we can come back and have a shot at this thing next year. Yeah. We can kind of do the math and kind of figure out who's going to be in this thing and what's going to go down in this next year. And so we kind of came back that following year and we're really kind of looking at like a deep run. And so I think the expectation level started to definitely started to grow a little bit more, especially nationally, like what he was doing nationally.
Right.
I think the commitment level definitely started to ramp up. But kind of to what you were talking about, he wasn't doing, he wasn't homeschooled. He was still going to regular school.
Oh, yeah.
He was getting out early. I remember picking him up like 2 or 3 times a week. We'd hustle back over to your place. You guys were lucky enough to have a court in the backyard in Thousand Oaks at the time.
Right.
So we'd get, a solid hour and a half of drilling or whatnot. But the level started to definitely increase. Can you talk a little
Right.
bit about during that time? What's your kind of underlying goals for Sam at that time? You know, kind of based on what he was doing result wise. He was starting to get some results nationally. He was starting to get a little pub, locally, obviously. But what is your and Mike's kind of underlying still goals for Sam as really kind of one of the top 14 and under kids in the country at that time? Where are you? What's your guys' mindset with him at that point?
Well, just a little backdrop. Mike and I didn't play tennis. So Mike was a good athlete. He'd played little league and basketball, and he was a great high school athlete. He was a great college baseball player. So he had that, but we weren't tennis people. We didn't know tennis per se. So there's that. So we're navigating. We're learning as a group, the three of us. Sam's. I remember we had a computer in our kitchen, and he would sit on this big exercise ball and look at the rankings occasionally. I mean, it was just fun, because you could follow along and see where people were going. I think we realized at that point, certainly, college was the goal.
Yeah.
Definitely college was the goal. And gosh, what if you could play tennis in college? Even though obviously it was a ways away.
Yeah.
But not that far. You're going to enter high school soon here. And wow, if you kept going here, you might be able to go to the college of your choice and play tennis.
Right.
So not that we were driving that home by any means, because he's 14, but we're learning too with the other parents, what's what. So I feel like that was the goal. But again, he's kind of sort of wants to maybe play basketball his freshman year. So he does go out for the basketball team, and he goes through all that, the 2 or 3 weeks of cuts and all this. And it's coming down to the final day and he's going to make the JV team. And I just remember he came home and he brought the schedule and, here's the commitment and here's what you do. And it was quite obvious there's no possible way you're going to do tennis and basketball. Right. Certainly not at the level he was at tennis. I mean, right. We were naive to think he could play basketball. But I guess we just were thriving a quote unquote normal, wanting to give this kid a normal high school experience, and trying out for teams is part of that. Yeah. So anyway, even though he went through the motions, and then he did go back to the coach the final day and said, I'm not going to complete this. I feel bad. I want to take someone's spot. And, thanks for the opportunity, but I realize I really just want to play tennis.
Yeah. Yeah. And then,
does that answer your question? I hope I'm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, for a lot of parents, I think that especially now, is the kids specialize so early, and you've got, 10 and under kids who are homeschooling, and who are just playing tennis, and they're kind of all chips in at a really, really young age. And so, and I don't know that it's right or wrong. But to me, the overall, that kind of the overall theme that you guys were bringing to the table was, it's, let's keep this fun. Let's keep this kind of in perspective. I think you guys were constantly playing and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I feel like you guys were constantly playing long game. Yes. And you guys started to get to the point where, let's see if we can get college paid for. I think that was kind of the whole main long game thing. Yes. Is if Duke or SC or UCLA can pay for college, then we win. And there wasn't a lot of talk about, this kid's going to be. There was no pro talk Zero. At 14, 15, probably even 16. It was so late before you guys really had to kind of make that determination, and there was no, expectation or pressure that this kid's going to be a pro. You know, there was no statement
Absolutely
of
no.
there was no
Zero.
statement and a line in the sand going, Sam's going to be pro. You
Right.
know, and I think
Yeah.
it was as normal can be while you had, you know, this young person who was turning into an exceptional talent. And
Right.
I just think that the way you guys did it was just smart. And I don't know if it just was it wasn't luck, but
It wasn't luck. Actually, his junior year of high school, and then I don't want to jump ahead of you, but I just remember booking a flight and saying to Sam, let's go. It might have been, it wasn't spring break, but I don't know what it was. We went and looked at University of North Carolina, um, Duke, and University of Virginia.
mm-hmm.
Three very academic, big, they all had very big tennis programs at the time. And I knew that kids, their senior year could go on a couple of these recruiting trips and paid for. I guess the schools, you get an X amount. But I thought to myself, what an opportunity to just go on our own
Yeah,
and have a look. So just to tell you, in his junior year of high school, that's what we were thinking.
yeah,
So that was just my point, is that we had never talked about being a professional tennis player at that point. And when we came home, and I think he realized that's way too far from home for him. That's why it's nice to go and do those things, by the way, because your kid can be standing there and realizing this is awesome, but it's also 2,000 miles away. And this is either great and I want to do this, or no, I don't.
yeah.